Hey. Oh, Fender's here.
If
anybody's there, let me know if you can hear me. We're working on getting all the equipment set up. So, yeah, let me know if we're too loud or too quiet or if there's no sound.
Hey guys,
Sweet.
Can you hear us okay? Okay, awesome. We can turn the volume up or down. Just let us know if we're too loud or too quiet.
Awesome.
Winnipeg, awesome.
Well, welcome everybody. It's been a long time since we've been able to do a live stream. It's a little bit tough when it's just Steve and I and the baby because she's getting older. She has more of a personality and she doesn't just want to hang out for an hour while we live stream. So it's really nice. We are visiting family in Utah right now. And that gives us people who can help watch little Dusty. And so now we finally get to do a live stream, which I've been wanting to do with you guys for a while. Just hop on and chat with everyone. Hey, from Southern California, howdy. Where else have we got people? Texas, yeah. Jennifer, did I meet you when I was in Texas, maybe? I've got some videos coming up from Texas. I posted one of my Texas videos already, and I've got 2 more. I got Spider Mountain coming and one other, which will be really fun. And then we'll have some other footage from our recent little travels to Bentonville as well. So we've got some stuff coming from there. And I got my Girls Like Diamonds shirt, which probably says something like Zrigil is something weird backwards right now, but it's a Girls Like Diamonds shirt. I just got this raglan, which I'm really digging. So if you guys are interested in getting Dusty Betty t-shirts and stuff, if you go to dustybetty.com/shop, there's links to all of that stuff, including the gear bags, which I did a video on recently. Yeah, so it's been an interesting few weeks. We are in the process of kind of trying to figure out how we want to tackle summer. We had these really, really ambitious travel plans to go back east and hit a lot of different stops. And we did some of that kind of in a spring tour where we did Texas and Arkansas and a couple other things like that. But it's getting tough with the baby. It's not tough traveling with the baby. It's tough balancing Steve's job with the baby, living in a tiny space. That is what is tricky, is when he has meetings and we've got a baby covered in oatmeal and like someone like calls in. He's like, crap, I gotta jump on a meeting, and me and the baby gotta like go outside all gooey and oatmeal-y. And we've been making it work, but it's been interesting. So we're trying to figure out how to tackle the summer. But what do you let me know, chime in if you guys have any fun summer mountain bike adventures planned. Our next big thing is we are going to the north rim of the Grand Canyon on a 5-day mountain bike and camping trip with Western Spirit, which we're really excited about.
It's not too late to put your 2-week notice in and join us.
Yeah, it's not too late to be sick. Yeah, so there are a few spots left. And if you're someone like who like you've been like thinking about going, but you're a little bit on the fence, send me an email because I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have and might be able to do something to help get you out on the trip. But yeah, definitely come. And we need some more lady power on this trip too. I mean, we'd love anyone who can come. It's going to be a fun group, but yeah, we're really excited. And Steve and I were talking about because we've gone on trips like this that we planned with our friends, and it's a ton of work and a lot of logistics. And so we feel like when you're paying someone to do it, it's kind of a sweet way to do it. And when you figure the cost of insurance and permits and food and shuttles and all the other transportation and stuff, like we even have guides, it's a pretty sweet deal. So we're really getting excited for that trip, starting to prep for it and plan for it and get bikes ready for it. And yeah.
Got to give a shout out to Steven Spencer, our friend from Tucson. Well, our neighbor in Tucson with the red ladder. Hey, Steven.
Oh, yeah.
Good to see you guys.
Awesome.
There's a chance we won't be back in Tucson this winter, but we'll see.
We'll see what happens. Everything is so up in the air right now. It's we kind of make a plan, and then a couple weeks later, we're like, I don't know. So we've kind of been flying by the seat of our pants for the last little bit. But did anyone post up about their cool adventures? Anyone doing anything
They're
cool?
just saying where they're from. Someone bought a chameleon.
Nice.
Awesome. Those are fun bikes. Will we ever come to Durango and shred Durango's mountains?
Yes, I think we should, don't you?
Yeah, we have before, but we probably should. It's probably super snowy there right now, I'm betting. So
yeah, Durango was one of the first places that we visited when we were traveling full time. It's a difficult place to RV. We tend to like to boondock or camp in kind of like, what do you call it? Dispersed camping areas, like free dispersed camping when we can, or just some kind of dispersed camping. But in Durango, it was pretty much parks. Was the only way to do it.
Which means $40-$50 a night.
Yeah,
and that adds up pretty quick.
It was rough, but it was beautiful there. And I really like that part of, what would you call that? Southern Colorado?
Southeast
Colorado?
Or Southwest, sorry, yeah.
Yeah, Southwest.
Yeah, it's beautiful there.
Yeah, absolutely beautiful.
Cool. Some people going to Silver Star, Vermont.
In
what
July.
Are we talking about today? I don't even know what you haven't told me.
I don't even know. I just wanted to hop on and chat with people. I thought we could talk bikes a little bit. We could talk plans a little bit. We could talk if any of you guys have questions. Like I just was keeping this casual because it's been so long since I've done a live stream that I kind of wanted to just kind of let this one be a little bit open-ended. Moving to Bend, Oregon from SoCal. Ooh, that's a good move.
Some fun trails there, yeah.
That's a really good move. We love Central Oregon. I don't know, whatever that.
Love Oregon, yeah.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
Ooh, 35 acres. That sounds good near Durango.
Oh,
we might take you up on that.
Yes.
shift, MTB.
Shoot me an email. DustyBettyMTB@gmail.com. Yeah, Vermont is one of those places that we've been wanting to go, and we had thought about doing it this year, and now I'm not sure if it's going to happen this year, but it's definitely on the list of places that we want to visit. Does your shirt say girls like diamonds? It says yes, it does say girls like diamonds. I'm not a Diamondback fan. I have nothing against them. I like riding mountain bikes more.
No, we have not ridden the new XTR. I'd like to, but nope. What do we do for jobs? I'm an instructional designer, and Tess runs Dusty Betty.
Yeah.
And she's a mom.
Yep. That keeps us pretty busy.
All right, good. I like the topics coming up. Cell phone
teaching someone new to the sport.
How can a veteran who's been mountain biking their whole life teach new person in the sport without being hard on them? Tess has a fantastic video dedicated just to that, but let's talk about it anyway.
Yeah. Well, one thing that has been good for me that I've kind of had the kind of a reminder lately is remembering what it's like to be an absolute beginner. Like, I mean, we could cover some of the things that I talk about in that video, but one thing that I want to kind of touch on is just all of the little bitty things that you completely take for granted, like starting and stopping on your bike, and just like knowing how to stop and get going again without hurting yourself, because I feel like a lot of the new mountain bikers get a lot of the kind of silly little injuries trying to get going again. So that's something like that. When I was pregnant, I was riding a lot with some newer people that I was trying to introduce to riding, and we just kind of do some kind of breezy trails. And that was something that Steve was really good to help me remember is something I completely take for granted. So we would kind of practice, okay, let's lower our seat when we're getting ready to stop. And then when we stop, get like whichever foot you like to start your pedal stroke on, get that in the 1 o'clock position so that when you're ready to go again, you're in the power position instead of trying to get going when you're like at, 3 o'clock and there's not much power you can give it. And with a bike, you really need to get rolling to get that centrifugal force to get your balance and get moving forward. But you want to take one?
Yeah. I mean, even just getting on and off the bike and manhandling the bike and setting it places and even that sort of thing, it sounds stupid, but that's something that new riders forget. But a lot of it has to do with you as the teacher. A lot of it's your attitude, and you need to change your expectations. So what makes mountain biking exciting for a veteran is not what makes it exciting for a new rider. So often we'll start with new riders and do a 1, maybe 2 mile paved loop where they can practice shifting, braking, getting on and off, looking around. So they don't have to think, wait, which brake's forward? And do I have the right fingers on the right brakes? And am I coasting with my pedals level? And we can practice all the basics there.
It also kind of gives you a good baseline for how comfortable they are on a bike in general, because everybody kind of different that way.
Yeah. And pick a good trail. Single track is hard. Even if there's no rocks, no bumps, a new rider has a hard time. If it's narrower than 2 feet, that's a challenge for a lot of people. So I would try to find something as close to a high school track as possible. And it doesn't need to be long. What you need is a quick win with this rider so that they'd be willing to do it again. And after someone's done about 5 or 10 on those, then you can slowly step it up and they're getting more confidence. They're enjoying it more. And if that's really hard for you, have someone else teach them. I really believe, especially for women, in the power of paying for a women instructor with other women, or a man instructor, but a group of women learning together, especially if you're talking women, is super valuable. Or even just a group of beginners, because then they can let their guard down and realize they're not the only ones struggling with X, Y, or Z. So you might not be the right person to teach them, but if you're dedicated to it and you want to teach them, just lower your expectations and realize a win is their fear should never be higher than a 5 out of 10 on the scale at any point of any ride. And while we could hop across a 6-inch rut or ditch, that is super scary for someone who's new. And so you kind of have to remember all that. Yeah,
just think about what's going to make it a win for them. And I think it's hard because, as I've introduced a lot of different people to mountain biking, some people progress really, really quickly, and others are like me, where it takes a while to kind of get comfortable. And so, definitely start on an easy trail, because they can always say this is boring, and you can go do something that's just the next step up. It's so much better than getting them in over their head and being like, oh, they've got it. They can just walk a few spots. If they have to walk a ton their first time because you took them on a trail that was too hard, that's not great for their morale, and it's hard to get them stoked to do it again.
And Kazak is right. You don't need a $6,000 bike to learn, but if you're learning on a bike that's not ready, that's not their size, that's hard to pull the brakes, or it rubs while it's shifting, anything you can do to make it a better experience for them. It might cost you some money up front by paying $80 or $100 a day to rent a good bike, but your chances of success are higher if the bike's at least tuned up and relatively new.
And in terms of the bike specifically, that's why the shakedown run that Steve talked about, maybe even going on a paved trail or riding around a parking lot for a mile or two, in that scenario where you are practicing braking and shifting, it's also a good shakedown for them to just get used to the bike and where different things are. A lot of people might be on a bike with a dropper post and they've never used one before. And it's nice if they can kind of practice using it a little bit before they hop on some single track. So yeah, doing a shakedown on whatever bike you put them on is a great idea too.
And I would add an element of what makes time with that person fun. So cell phone, I don't know if it's your girlfriend or your daughter or a friend, but think about what about your relationship do they like? Maybe it's having a picnic halfway through the ride. Maybe it's stopping to get a milkshake. Maybe it's taking pictures at the top of the mountain when you get there, where maybe when you ride with your buddies, you're just trying to get down as fast as possible. So I would add some sort of incentive in the middle and at the end to make it a great day with that person. Even if the mountain biking aspect wasn't great, they will still look back fondly on the day, and your likelihood of them coming back is high.
Yeah. Another thing that I would say is maybe just pick 2 to 3 tips to give someone on any given ride. Because if you're overwhelming them with too much information, it's just like, and then if they're not super comfortable on the bike, they feel bumbly, and then they're having a hard time remembering all this. So maybe you just focus on braking with one finger and looking ahead, or coasting with your pedals level and looking ahead, or something like that. So maybe you can go over some basic tips before you even hit the trail or you're pedaling around the parking lot. But once you get on the trail, try to keep it as simple as possible. And you definitely want to make sure they know how to use their brakes and are comfortable using their brakes before you hit the trail, because we've gone on rides with people who just like
they backpedal thinking they have a coaster brake,
and they didn't even have a hand or a
freak
finger
out and
on
they're
the
just
brakes.
death gripping and they just launch off rocks.
Yeah, we were in Sedona with someone and it was like she didn't even have a finger on the brakes. It was like she had, and I can't blame her because she'd never been mountain biking before, but it's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. So after that, we found like a nice big flat open area and practiced just some simple braking drills, because you want to make sure that if they're going too fast and they need to brake to get around, follow the trail around a tree or something, that they can do that without crashing into something and getting hurt. So
2 last pieces of advice on that. Then I do want to move on to another question, unless you got more to say.
No, that's great.
But probably the biggest pitfall people make when introducing new people is trying to push their skill faster than it's ready for. So trying to get them to do harder and harder things every single ride. Let them get 20 good rides with no crashes, with no scary moments, and you're way more and they'll start pushing themselves. So don't feel like you need to teach them how to bunny hop or to get up and down curbs or to handle all these route sections or these really steep things. Stay on the easy trails for the first 20.
Keep morale high, and if they are enjoying it, they will be like, all right, let's do more.
It's an investment, and you're putting up with 20 crappy rides in your mind for them having 20 great rides so that the future will be better. And I remember when Tess was learning, I got a different bike. I actually bought a Hardtail because it wasn't fun for me to ride my enduro bike at walking speeds. But when I was back on my Hardtail and Tess was learning, we would ride at the same pace and have fun. And I just had to lower my expectations. I got a lot slower. I lost a lot of fitness, but it was an investment. And then 6 months later, man, she was keeping up with me on the Hardtail. It was really fun. And
make sure that you check out my video, how to get your girlfriend hooked on mountain biking, because the tips in that, thankfully tonight, we didn't really overlap that a little bit. We've thought about it a ton because we've continued to introduce people to it. So it was kind of fun to talk about it again. But go check out that video because there's even more tips on there. So how to get your girlfriend hooked on mountain biking. And I'll make sure I link that after the live stream is over.
And my number one tip for intermediate riders the biggest problem I see on the trail with people who've been riding a year or two on climbs is they're not getting their weight ahead of the bottom bracket. So when you ride a beach cruiser and you're kind of sitting back like a low rider, all your weight is behind the bottom bracket where the cranks come out. Well, when your weight's behind there, you're pedaling the bike from behind, and it's not only wanting to wheelie, but you have no power. And so what intermediate riders need to do is get the bars to their hips or their chest, like touch them, go a little bit too far at first, and then back off just a little and get all of your weight, all of your center of gravity ahead of that bottom bracket. And then if you've ever ridden a unicycle, you probably haven't if you're an intermediate rider, but if you have, the way you ride a unicycle is you can't just stay perfectly straight up and pedal because you'll always be falling backwards. You have to fall forward and then pedal to kind of catch up to keep yourself upright. So you're always leaning ahead of the center of gravity and catching up with that. Well, we need to do the same thing when we're climbing on our mountain bikes.
Those of you who are runners will know the same thing. They talk about tilt when you run. It's the same thing where you get your weight forward so that you're always kind of chasing after it that way.
So Shift MTB asked, I have a short travel 29er, a 110 mil travel. I haven't seen any reason to get a longer travel bike, but everybody tells me to get a huge enduro bike. Why?
It just depends on what trails you want to ride. If you don't feel like your bike is limiting you on the trails that you're riding, then you might not need to do one. But one thing that could be fun is, if you're curious to try, is just ask your local bike shop if there are going to be any demo days in your area that summer. And then you can try a big burly enduro bike, and you can either be like, oh, wow, that person was right. Or you can be like, my bike is great.
Yeah, one thing I need to do better about in my reviews is remember to give advice for all types of riders, not just my type of riding. So when we're riding in Sedona, the perfect bike for Sedona is not the perfect bike for northern Utah, where we are right now. If we lived here, I'd get a 120 mil travel hardtail.
I kind of want
29er
anyway.
and just like an XC bike and just ride that everywhere. But that's not the right bike for Sedona. So it really depends on your riding. Do you keep your wheels on the ground? There's three reasons people recommend enduro bikes. One, they're fun. They really are for the right trail. Two, they're easier to ride. And so riders who are not very good can now ride hard trails because the bike is doing all of the work for them. And number 3, there's a coolness factor that's super high right now. It's one of my pet peeves is how mountain bikes try to copy everything motorcycle. We whip, we wear the goggles, we wear the full face helmets. We even make brap noises when we ride. And I think mountain biking is cool enough that it doesn't need to pretend we're motorcycles when we're up there. But the enduro thing is definitely there's a reason big enduro bikes exist, and there are trails in Durango where you will use all of that travel. But I'd rent one, see what it's like. But don't just because people tell you you need a certain thing, you don't. Feel free to stand up and do your own thing.
Yeah.
But I will say, ride bikes with different geometries, because geometry and the angles is way more important than the amount of travel or how light it is or how much it costs.
And it's always like slowly evolving, you know? So I think if you live in an area where you've got a bike shop that invites some of the you know, like if your local shop sells Santa Cruz might come to their shop in the summer and do a demo day. So it can just be kind of a fun, good experience, even if you're not looking for a bike, just to get the experience on different kinds of bikes. I think it's a good thing. And it also will help you if you're introducing someone new into mountain biking, even if you love your bike. You know, it's nice if you can talk to the different kinds of bikes and stuff like that. But for me, I mean, like, I actually am to the point where I like having 2 bikes, because there's a lot of stuff that I really want my burly enduro bike for, but there's some stuff that would be more fun on a lower travel hardtail even. So
someone asked if you're going to get a downhill bike this year.
I know, I saw that. It's kind of funny. Like, it's probably not going to happen this year. I don't know if I'll ever own a downhill bike, but I do want to do a video where I ride a downhill bike. So I think that could be a really fun.
The challenge is going to be, so Tess weighs 110 pounds. She, like, 2.2 tires on her are like 2.8s for bigger people like me. And finding a rental downhill bike that has shocks that can handle a 110-pound person is going to be tricky. Really tough.
I might have to work with a company even maybe to kind of find a way to make that work. I don't know, but
downhill bikes are cool.
It'd be fun.
But they're expensive, and you need to live somewhere with lift access or you'll never use it enough. It'd be cheaper to just rent one 6 times a year than to buy one.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I don't see myself ever buying one, because I don't think we'll ever like
live at Whistler.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I don't think that's ever going to be our drive, but I do think it would. I'm glad you mentioned that, because I think that would be a really, really fun video. It's tricky though, because I'm like, I don't know, like, do I need a downhill bike? I could probably just ride an enduro bike at a park, because I'm not going to be shooting like 40-foot gas or anything.
Though that's what's funny is downhill bikes have now become jump bikes, but downhills can ride insane chunky trails. But the trick to a downhill bike, it's so different, is you need time on it and you need to get it really adjusted to you. And that takes 10 rides. And if you're renting at a park, chances are they've got a spring on there you don't like, or the brakes are a little bit weird, or
there needs to really, like, it's probably not going to happen. It's really tough right now because I have a nursing baby, and it's like being on a leash, you know, basically, because even if I don't have her with me, I have to like stop and pump at that point. So it's kind of crazy, but I do think it'd be really fun to do like at least like a 3-day park experience where I pick a mountain bike park and Steve and I ride it for 3 days back to back, because I think that's how most people ride park. And usually when we do it, we just kind of like, oh, we've got a day and we're in this area. Let's go ride this park this one day. And most people, you know, they'll pick like 2 or 3 trails that they session like for several days or a week, or like when you go to Whistler, a lot of people go for like a month or something like that, or 2 weeks. And so we got to try riding park like the way that people ride park. But so far we just kind of do it like tourists, to be honest.
Yeah. So I don't love park.
I don't either. I really.
But that's why we should do it more.
I keep wanting to try and love it, but I don't.
So if someone's learning, is it better to learn on a hardtail or a full suspension bike?
You know, when I first started riding, like Steve said, he bought a hardtail. And so then there were some times where I would ride the hardtail, and that was really good for me. Ultimately, it doesn't matter. I would say definitely whatever you get, don't go I mean, it just depends. Some people are super aggressive and they'll progress really quickly, but I'd say don't go over like 120, 130 for travel, and and really give yourself time to become sensitive to the feedback that the bike is giving you. But I will say, like, hardtails are kind of a cool thing to start on because they don't hide any of your flaws. Like, you will feel exactly what is going on in the rear end of your bike. And it's been good for me because I've been trying to work on technical climbing more. And like, one of my biggest hangups is that I forget what's going on with my back tire. I focus so much on how I'm going to pedal wheeling my front tire up, or I'm going to lift it up, or I'm going to do whatever. And then my back tire just goes bonk because I'm looking at the next step that I've got my front tire on. So I will say that when I ride the hardtail, it definitely makes me ride cleaner and pay more attention to where both tires are and think about that. So I guess that's the advantage of if you do decide to ride a hardtail starting out, is it will make you more sensitive as a rider and less sloppy, maybe.
Yeah. So I have feelings about that. Both bikes will make you a better rider, and just riding your bike and sessioning and practicing, no matter what bike, will make you a better rider. That's the most important part.
And some places, like, depending on where you live, it probably just makes sense to go ahead and get a full suspension. It just depends.
That's the next thing I was going to say. If you have very rocky terrain, if you're in Arizona, if you're in rocky parts of Colorado, if you're in Utah with lots of rocks, I think a full suspension makes a lot of sense. If you're in Northern California and you're not riding Tahoe, I would totally get a hardtail. And if you do get a hardtail, I would get one with plus tires. I'm a big fan of the bigger 2.8 to 3.0 tires for beginners especially, but that's what I ride now. And I've been riding for 20, 25 years. And so having the plus tires is huge, and it almost acts like a little bit of suspension. So hang on, let me finish this thought real quick. So with full suspension, if you learn on a full suspension, you will go faster, easier than if you learn on a hardtail. But you'll be a sloppier rider, but you'll look better because you can ride harder stuff on that. If you learn on a hardtail, you will be slower. It will take you longer to learn to ride fast, but you will have excellent technique for the most part. But when you switch to a full suspension, it's going to feel really weird, and it'll take you probably 10 rides to get used to it. And the other problem with full suspensions is most people don't set them up correctly. And people have a hard enough time just setting the fork on a hardtail. Now you have to set the fork correctly, and you have to set the rear pressure correctly. And most people don't know how to set their shocks correctly. And so they might be riding a full suspension, but it's actually hurting them because it's not set up properly. So there's something beautiful about the simplicity of a hardtail, that they're cheaper. It's easier to get a good one at a cheap price that will work well for you. They're fun. But if you're in a spot with rocks where in a 100-foot stretch, there's more than 2 rocks the size of a cantaloupe or bigger, you might want a full suspension. But if you're on stuff that's pretty flowy and all the rocks are orange size or smaller, man, you can get away with a hardtail. And on my channel, I've been riding the hardtail on the craziest trails I can find. And I have to go a little slower than my full suspension, and braking's a little bit trickier on the really crazy double black diamond stuff. Everything else, I have a riot on my hardtail. I love the simplicity. It's easy to wash. It's easy to maintain. I love the simplicity.
It's a beautiful, simple machine.
Yeah, and hardtails make easy trails fun again. When you get that big enduro bike, most of the trails around you are no longer fun because they're either not steep enough to go fast, or they're not rocky enough to use all that suspension, and it's just kind of boring. What were you going to say? Oh,
I was thinking, I'm glad that you made me wait because you needed to finish that. But I kind of wanted to go on a side thing about tire size, tire width, because like Steve was saying, the plus tire, plus hardtails, and those are super fun. And I have a plus hardtail right now. I have an Orbea Laufey, and it's really fun. But one thing that I'm starting to find is if you are like me, where you are a really light rider and you're really petite, for me, I feel like I can get the benefit of a plus tire out of probably a 2.4 wide tire. So I can save weight there. So that's kind of something I've been thinking about. Yeah,
tire weight is something that's often overlooked. People will buy carbon rims and then throw really meaty tires on there.
Which I did.
Like me. Yeah.
I did that.
But, you pay all this money to save weight in the rim, but if you saved weight on the tire, you'll feel it even more as long as you have the grip that you need. But look into lightweight tires. And if you're a smaller, more petite rider, look into that. And you should definitely be riding tubeless. We were just going to say that.
Definitely.
I was a big holdout, and I was like, I never get flats with tubes. Tubeless is dumb. It's just a fad. If you get rims that are actually meant for it and tires that are meant for it, you will be riding your bike more and playing with it less.
Yeah. One thing that's tough though is it's like finding thank you for the super chat. So from that, thank you. One thing, what was I going to say? Oh, tires. It's tough, like trying new tires, I feel like, because I'm really, really picky about grip. And like, I don't want it to be too slow a tire, but I want really good grip so that when I go to Moab, I'm not spinning my back tire. But it's tough because good tires are such an investment. Like it's a bummer when you're like, okay, I'm going to try this new one. And you're like, dang it, I hate it. And then you have to try and ride the crap out of it as fast as you can so you can justify buying a new one.
What about using downhill tires all the time? If your username is XCSam, probably not a good idea if you're writing XC stuff, I'm going to suggest. Downhill tires have a different feel. They're burlier. They have tons of grip. They're draggier. They're slower. So when you're on the flat parts, you're doing more work to keep them going. So it really depends on your riding. If it's really steep stuff that you're riding and you need tons of grip and the flat protection, downhill tires are awesome. But I weigh 180 and I have never ridden downhill casing tires. I run downhill tread tires, but I don't run downhill casing. I saw up here, XC Sam, you're 5'2". It's hard to shop around looking for an extra small frame. Yeah. You're absolutely right. And 29ers are really hard for people our size. I'm 5'6". Yeah. Tess is 5'4".
They're getting better at the geometry, but I think as you start to get into those extra smalls, you do run into some geometry problems. The small ones are getting better, and you just kind of have to keep an eye on it. One of the big flaws that I've seen on some of the extra small 29ers is that sometimes when you, at slow speeds, when you're going fast, usually you lean your bike to turn, but at slower speeds, you might be doing a little more bar steer. And like the tire can knock one of your feet off the pedal. If
we had a friend crash that way, yeah. The tire overlapped with her front foot. It hit her front foot and she went over the bars. And
so make sure you check that as you are test riding bikes, Sam, is put one of your feet on the pedal, put it in the level position, but toward the front of the bike, and make sure that you can turn the front tire without knocking your foot off the pedal. Because with extra smalls, that's going to be tough.
Would you ever consider upgrading a non-boost front hub to a boost hub? No, boost is a joke, and the biggest problem with boost is non-boost wheels don't work in, let me see, non-boost. If you wanted to upgrade your non-boost front hub to a boost hub, you could, but it wouldn't fit in your non-boost fork. So boost is a stupid thing the industry did. They added 1 centimeter wider on your fork and 1 centimeter wider in the back of your frame so that your wheels wouldn't fit anymore and you had to go buy new wheels. And they claimed it's like 15% stiffer or something. It's
I don't think it matters for most of us.
Bunch of garbage. Yeah. Now that all my bikes are boost, that's fine, but I could not tell a difference between boost and non-boost. A good wheel set is way more important than the width of your hub. So I would not upgrade for the sake of upgrading. The only reason I would upgrade is if you know you're going to buy another fork or frame in the future and you want them to be able to work. But even then, you can run a non-boost wheel and put spacers on it so it fits in your future bike, but you can't go the other way.
Yeah.
Flow trails here, so you ride a hardtail. Totally. Yeah, for flow trails,
that's super fun.
Hardtails are way more fun.
You just crack through those turns, and it's so fun on a hardtail.
Hardtails are a blast. And try hardtails with different geometries. Hardtails are still pretty far behind right now for being fun, but it depends on where you ride. If you race a little bit of XC, an XC hardtail is awesome. If you just like to party and you're doing jumps and really steep stuff, an aggressive hardtail is a totally different experience than an XC hardtail. You want to come be in the
live stream, Fender?
Come on up.
Come on. I kind of want to make my hardtail a 29er. I've been kind of thinking, I think that'd be kind of fun just because usually when I ride my hardtail, Steve does, if you guys haven't seen his channel, Hardtail Party, you should go check that out. He will ride crazy trails on his hardtail. Just kind of showing that, like, you can have like a simpler, less expensive bike and still do some cool stuff on it. I don't think I'll be riding any double black diamonds on a hardtail anytime soon. Usually when I ride mine, it's when I'm doing
skills or mellow stuff.
mellower stuff. It's a little more fun for me on my hardtail if it's not something super burly. And I've been on a couple of 29ers enough to make me think, no fender, to think it might be a fun hardtails to have a 29er. Just I love the feel, the way that they roll. And like I said, the geometry on a lot of the 29ers for the smaller size frames is getting better. But I want it to be more like trail geometry. So I want the head tube angle to be at least 67 degrees, if not slacker, and kind of like a shorter chainstay rather than like XC geometry with like a super steep head tube angle and short chainstay and stuff. So something that I've been thinking about.
Hola Vapor, gracias por vernos. In patron rides, do we allow e-bike riders? Sure, if you can keep up and if it's allowed on the trail, sure.
Yeah.
If it's not allowed on the trail, we would encourage you not to ride e-bikes on non-e-bike trails. No. Yeah, Boost was created to boost sales. Yep. You're right. It is hard to differentiate which upgrades are worth it. And it's also hard to know for the average rider to know what these terms mean. And if you go out and spend $1,500 on wheels, which is a great upgrade, but you're not sure if next year those wheels are even going to work in your new frame, people aren't going to spend that on the wheels. And if it used to be in the days, man, I would build all my bikes up from frames and just use my parts and recycle them and swap them back and forth. Bikes have gotten so bad now you can hardly swap any parts from one bike to the next. It's really a shame. And bikes are kind of seen as throwaway now, and you ride it for a couple years, sell it or give it away, and then go buy a whole brand new bike again. And man, I miss the days when we could swap parts back and forth and just buy a cheap bike with a good frame and then slowly upgrade the parts.
Oh, here's a question for you guys who are tuning in is if Steve and I go to an outer bike, what kinds of bikes would you like to see us ride? Because I've kind of thought a lot of the questions that I get from people are, they're wanting a bike, but they are on a bit of a budget. So that's kind of made me think, maybe I should look for some of the, like less expensive bikes out there when I'm an outer bike. But I don't know. Is there any particular category that you guys would be curious to see me ride? So at outer bike, obviously these are not extensive reviews. These are just kind of short first impression kind of videos, but yeah, let me know what you think.
Cool. What other questions you guys have?
Yeah. If anyone else has hopped on, I just want to remind you that Steve and I are going on a Western Spirit guided trip to the North Rim of the Grand Canyon in about 2 weeks, and there are still spots available. So if you've been on the fence, don't wait any longer, get signed up. If you have any extra questions or anything like that, send me a message through Instagram or something like that, and I'd be happy to talk to you and see if I can do something to help get you out.
Yeah, we'll be transparent. We don't make money if you go on this trip, but if we're able to fill this trip, then Western Spirit will be able to keep working with us for future trips. If we partner with them and get nobody showing up at these trips, I don't think they're going to be excited to do another one with us in the future. But that's okay. We get it. It's not that expensive for a 5-day trip.
That where permits are involved and they're
doing not expensive
all the food,
at all.
They're doing the transportation. Like it's a pretty good deal. And it's going to be a really fun trip and a fun video. So I hope some of you guys can be in it. And if there's any of you ladies out there who can come, we could use some more lady power on this trip. We could use more anyone power. But we've got a fun group going. I think it's going to be cool.
We love Danny daycare video. In fact, last year we talked about filming one like that of taking a kid stroller off of jumps with a dummy in there. And then we saw his, and part of me was like, dang it, he did our idea. And then the other part of me is like, yay, he did our idea, and he did it way better than we could have. So
definitely.
Pretty cool.
He had the budget to do
fun.
It right. It was pretty awesome.
Cool. What other questions do you guys have?
Yeah. We've got about 20 more minutes. So
if you could have any bike right now, what would you get right now?
Oh, there's what's the name of that Ibis hardtail that's like super light?
The DV9.
The DV9. Ibis DV9. It's like the frame weighs like 2 pounds,
2.6.
Yeah.
It's a carbon hardtail, and the frame alone is only $1,000.
And it's so beautiful. I want one so bad. I don't know. I might save all my super chat money for a long, long time before I can afford a carbon hardtail frame, but that'd be pretty fun.
We got to give a huge shout out to all of you that are watching with a significant other or a kid, or we know a lot of couples watch this together. So thank you. Way to go getting your significant other stoked on mountain biking. Yeah,
it always makes me feel so happy when I hear from you guys, either through YouTube or Instagram or whatever, and you guys talk about that maybe you are new to mountain biking and you watch my stuff, or maybe you have a significant other that's gotten into it and you watch my stuff together, which I think is super duper cool. And if you ever run into us on the trail, don't be afraid to say hi. Like, I think it's so cool because like right now it's tough because like we're trying to balance a lot between family life and work life. And sometimes I'm just like, what am I doing? This Dusty Betty thing, but I love doing it. And so I keep doing it. But sometimes I just feel like, I don't even know if there's anyone on the other end of this. And then I hear from you guys who say that like, you really loved this video because it helped you, or watching me session at 50 year made you want to session stuff more when you ride, and now you can do front wheel lifts or, you know, whatever. So thanks so much everyone for watching and supporting and connecting with what I do. It means a lot. If you're not subscribed, please do. And if you guys, anytime you guys can like the videos that you watch on my channel, that also helps. And you should check out Steve's channel, Hardtail Party, if you haven't already, because Steve does so much fun stuff with that, and he does really cool edits. And I love talking bike with Steve because he knows a lot, you know, and so it's really great. I love bouncing ideas off of him, which is another reason why it's fun to have him here on the live streams with me, because if there's ever anything that I'm like, I don't know, like Steve usually has some inkling of how to address the questions and stuff. So
hi, Wendy. Your brother is awesome. Welcome to the channel. Thanks for watching. Kelly wants to know, do we still full-time
RV? We do. It's really hard right now. It's getting hard. And traveling with a little kid, you know, we have some friends who travel full-time with a little one, but they have a business that is pretty like passive, you know, income in a lot of ways. And so they can work 4 hours a week and then just do family stuff the rest of the time. And I don't resent them because they work their butts off usually to establish a business that functions like that. But the kind of work that Steve does is very collaborative. It involves a lot of meetings and brainstorming sessions with other people. And so it's his job with full-time RV and a baby in the same room that gets tough. So that's kind of getting tricky.
Life's really hard right now, actually, in the RV.
Yeah.
Advice for a first-time outer biker.
First-time outer biker.
All right, here's a secret. Everyone wants the hot bikes. So the Yetis and the Ibis Ripmos and the Evils, those go, and the Santa Cruz, actually Santa Cruz usually isn't an outer bike. Those go immediately, and people will go stand in line for 2 or 3 hours before the gates open to get one. And when the gates open, they run. That's one way to get the bike you want. But here's the real secret. Wait until day 3. Everyone is exhausted.
Yeah.
Everyone's already ridden those bikes a little bit, and they're totally available. So on day 3, you can ride any bike you want, and you don't have to wake up at 6 a.m. and stand in the cold and wait for it to open.
And, you know, really everyone is so tired because those first 2 days, if you hop on a bike, you're going to pedal hard. If you only have like an hour or two to pedal that bike, like you really want to put it through its paces. So yeah, everyone really is beat by that 3rd day. And I also have a video that I did with some tips for outer bikes. So I will make sure I link that, but you might search, I think it is titled something like top 10 tips for outer bike or something like that, but I'll make sure I link it. So you should check out that video because that will help you kind of get started. And the other thing too is I would say realistically, don't plan on riding more than 2 or 3 bikes a day, because if you ride more than 2 or 3 bikes a day, you're not going to get very much time on them and get a very good feel for them, and you're going to destroy yourself. So realistically, you know, 2 to 3 bikes a day is a pretty realistic expectation.
And do a lot of research beforehand. Know which bike you want. Bring your pedals. Bring water bottles and Camelbacks, because
sunscreen and chapstick, because your lips are going to get destroyed.
High-end, fully upgraded bike, 5 years old, or entry-level new geometry bike?
Probably, I don't know, entry-level.
Geometry is more important than anything.
Yeah, and you can always, like, an entry-level bike, depending on how entry-level it is, there are a couple things that you could swap out as time goes on, or maybe you ride that bike for a year till you kind of get a better idea of what you want, or save up more money and then get something else. But the older bikes, the thing is, like, trail building, if you're a newer rider, you don't realize there's constantly trail building and trail maintenance going on. And they're building trails and maintaining them to accommodate modern geometry. So a lot of times when we ride with people with really outdated geometry bikes, sometimes they struggle more on the trails because the features aren't built for bikes with that head tube angle or with that chainstay or that seat tube angle or whatever. So geometry is pretty important.
My bike only has 3 nice parts on it, and all of the rest are absolute bottom of the barrel parts, and I have a blast on it. And there's a reason I do that. I want to show that a $6,000 bike is not, it's maybe 2% more fun than a $1,200 bike. So I've got good brakes, a good fork, and a good rear hub. Every other piece is like almost Dick's Sporting Good quality. It's NX, the lowest level of SRAM. I don't have a 12-speed. I'm running 1x11 on my Hardtail, and 1x11 NX shifts better than XTR from 5 years ago anyway. So like some components make sense to upgrade, like your rear hub and good brakes and a good fork. But man, even the junky stuff these days, junky meaning on bikes that start about $800 or $900, even those are way better than even some of the best stuff 5 or 6 years ago.
Hi, Janny, watching on the night shift. Where is the Laufey? The Laufey, yeah, the Laufey hasn't been in
Laufey vids, yeah.
Yeah, I haven't ridden it as much. Honestly, like, one thing that's tricky is the way we have the bike stored in the trailer right now. It's not as slick as when we had our van and they all just kind of had their slots they could go in. All the bikes have to go in a very specific order in the trailer, and they all have to come out in a very specific order. So honestly, like, it's just been hard to get a ride in, period, over the last, 6 months. And so the Laufey is always at the bottom of the pile. That's the honest to goodness truth. I've got to grab whatever I can as quick as I can.
And we're riding less, and we've been riding Arizona a lot. And Arizona's chunky enough that it warrants a full suspension bike.
Yeah. I did ride the Laufey a ton when I was pregnant, though, because I was riding like smoother trails anyway. So I was just like, well, I just want to be able to ride my hardtail so I can just stand up and sprint my brains out.
I got to chuckle at Matt's comment, because I've never heard a comment about the East Coast without somebody warning us about the roots and the rocks. And maybe I'm totally naive, but we've ridden a lot of roots and rocks in our life, but maybe it's so incredibly different in Northeast. Anytime I review a bike, people see it on the rocky, chunky terrain of Moab or Sedona or wherever I'm at and say, yeah, but how would it do back east in all this rocky and rooty terrain?
We need to really experience it for ourselves.
Yeah. That's a good way to say it.
Comes down to. True. But we feel like we ride roots and rocks when we go to
I'm not scared at all. I don't think it's going to be a challenge.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see.
I mean, roots are tricky. They have roots in the Pacific Northwest. They have rocks. I like rocks. I love rocks. Yeah. We've ridden North Carolina. We've ridden Virginia. We've ridden Chattanooga. And there's rocky and rooty stuff there. But it's probably more in Virginia.
And Matt, you did hear a rumor. We were planning on going to the Northeast. But Steve and I mentioned this early on. A lot of our plans were kind of taking things like 2 weeks at a time because life has been super crazy lately. And so we're kind of taking things 2 weeks at a time. So we don't know if we'll go that far east. I'm starting to think it's just most of our life keeps us in the West, even though we are still technically traveling full time. We've slowed the pace down, but we are still traveling. It might make more sense for us to just fly back east and just pick a couple of spots we want to do. So I don't know. Probably it may not happen this year, but we haven't decided for sure. But we really want to. I really want to ride in Vermont, especially. I've heard a lot of good things.
Yeah, we want to go there so bad.
Yeah.
MRP ramp control. you want to take that one, or do you want me to take that one?
I like the controls. I know, like, as far as the forks in general, I've had luck with mine. I really like mine. It had kind of like a jiggly feeling at the top out, but as far as the ramp control, I really like
Test ride's a ribbon, an MRP ribbon that has ramp control built in.
Yeah,
I've
Steve
got
has
that
upgraded,
too.
but yeah, Steve has put it on his Fox 36.
Yeah, I put the ramp control. So I like that it is super adjustable. It's great on the hardtail because if I'm going to be hitting drops, my fork takes it all, and I need a different number of spacers than if I'm going on an XC ride. So being able to just crank that is great. But there's one thing I don't like about it, and that is when you put volume spacers in a fork, it sits higher in its sag. And when you don't have that with the ramp control only works when the fork's moving. So on my Fox 36, it sags a little bit lower. So I'm running more sag because it's not taking up volume and kind of ramping that up. And so it only ramps up when you hit a big hit. It's almost like a fast, high-speed compression. So pros and cons. I like it, but I do wish my front shock sat a little bit higher, or my front fork sat a little higher like it did back when I had tokens in it. Kind of interesting.
Enough that you would want to, if you could switch it, would you go back to running tokens, or do you like being able to still adjust it?
On the hardtail, absolutely. On a full suspension, I don't want a ramp control. I would rather have the support of the tokens and just set it once and leave it forever. The MRP, it's a great fork. There's a couple things I don't like about it, and I hate sharing this because we love the people at MRP and they've been very good to us. But I want to be honest. I don't like that they're stupid little things, but they bug you just a little bit every time. Like when you put the wheel on, the fork flexes enough that it doesn't sit on the wheel when you try to put the axle in. It can go past it. There's enough flex that it'll get wider than the dropouts. I don't like that the axle takes two hands. You got to hold the nut on the other one. It's nice because you can always get it to angle at the right angle, but you need two hands to put the axle on. You can't just, like a Fox or RockShox, spin the axle in there. And there's a lot of adjustment on an MRP, and it's amazing the adjustment you can do. It's overly complicated for most people. Sometimes it's a little overly complicated for me. I think I'm pretty good at tuning suspensions, but sometimes I can't quite get it to feel right. And even though it has more adjustment than a Fox or a RockShox, the Fox or the RockShox always perform the same for me. Whereas I feel like sometimes the MRP's on and sometimes it's off.
I do feel like every now and then it kind of gets a little bit like, whoa, this is getting crazy. So I just have to let all of the pressure out in my negative and positive chambers and like restart. So that does happen from time to time. MTB Chump said he took out a Trance 29er with 34 Rhythm NX guide brakes. Aside from the brakes, he was surprised how well it rode compared to higher, end bike, which, yeah, it's true. Like I think you can definitely get away with buying, like a less expensive build and then just swap out a few things. I like a good hub, and I like light wheels. Sometimes having a little bit better shifting is nice, but it's true. I mean, you don't always have to get the super fanciest build, but I will say as a lighter rider, in the spirit of honesty, I am a weight weenie because I'm really, really light. And so I think for me, like a lot of times I tend to go with some of the more expensive parts when I can, just to save weight. It's a good place to shave grams off, which, if you weigh like 180 pounds, like shaving a few grams off of, a 32-pound bike, it's like whatever. But if you weigh 110 pounds and you can shave, a few grams or a pound and a half off, like that starts to add up. But I agree. I think, like buying less expensive builds, if it gets you into a bike with good geometry, I'm totally with you, Chump MTB.
I'm all for saving money, but I am not for people putting 5 bikes on a spreadsheet and saying they all have the same shifter, they all have the same fork. I'm going to buy this one because it's $1,000 cheaper. Geometry is super important. And the suspension design is super important. An Ibis does not climb like a Santa Cruz, which does not climb like a Yeti, which does not climb like a YT. They all have a totally different feel. And
That's
if
why
you're
you
going to
really
spend
have
$5 or $6 on a bike, get one that works for you. And the right bike for Vermont and roots and rocks is not the right bike for Moab, because you need a bike that's going to bob when you pedal. You need a bike that's going to stay planted on those roots and rocks. It's talking full suspension here. Whereas in Moab and California and stuff, we want bikes that when you stomp on the pedals, it sprints and it doesn't bob at all, because we don't need tires glued to the ground on the climbs. And some bikes feel very different than others. Some bikes feel great up and great down. Some bikes feel great up and awful down. Some feel awful up and great down. And some feel awful in all situations.
And you really do have to, I think it is really, really helpful to throw your leg over these bikes when you can and take advantage of, free demo days if any of those are going to be in your area, or if you're going to spend a few $1,000s on a bike, go to Outer Bike, spend a couple $100. It will be a good investment, because even comparing geometry on a spreadsheet, like Steve said, the suspension designs and the suspension tunings are different. And so on paper, you might be like, well, this one's kind of on the list, but I don't think I'm going to like it because of this and that. And then you hop on it and you're like, I loved it. I don't know what it was, but I loved it. And it's probably some little nuance with the suspension linkage or, the tuning. I don't know.
And if you can afford it, ride it more than once. And this is another tip for Outer Bike or any demo. At Outer Bike, they pump the tires up way too hard. And so it's going to be harsh, and the suspension isn't going to work very well, period. They've got like 45 PSI in there. And a lot of times they don't set the sag quite right. They're doing their best, but they're busy. And sometimes I always take a shock pump with me, and I always take a tire pump with me, and I change the tire pressure and I change the fork and the rear shock pressure if it's not quite right. And that will completely, like 5 PSI out of a rear shock will completely change how a bike rides. Back to the MRP before I forget. Do I still like it? It's not my favorite fork, to be honest. It's some people really love it. I much prefer, my favorite forks are RockShox, Cane Creek, and Fox. The MRP is fine. Forks are so expensive that I can't afford to get rid of it and buy something else. If someone wants to buy my MRP, let me know. I'd be happy to sell it. I would rather have a Fox or a RockShox or a Cane Creek because they're simple and they're a little bit more consistent. My MRP is not consistent. But I will say MRP is the one company that you should actually pump up the pressures and put all the settings to what they recommend. RockShox and Fox recommend way too much pressure, but MRP's got it spot on. Yeah, for some reason, I get more arm pump on mine. I'm more fatigued at the end of the day. It might feel really great for the first hour, and then after that, it doesn't feel great. I had to send mine in to get the damper bled again. It had bubbles in it, was making a knocking sound from the beginning. I love the guys. The factory's awesome. It's not my favorite fork, and I'm sad to say that because I wanted it to be.
Someone asked me how much pressure I run on my fork. I don't know. I always just check the charts. A lot of times I have to do a little bit of math myself because most of the charts don't go below 120 pounds. So I have to do a little bit of math, and I have a ribbon on one bike and a Fox 34 on the other. But I usually run pretty close to recommended. Sometimes I will run a little bit less.
Oh, the little children have come out to play. I can see.
Yeah, thank you. I was trying to figure out how to do that. Were there any other questions?
How do we keep our bikes clean on the road?
That is a good question. We have like a little wash bucket, and we will usually wash our bikes. Before we had Little Dusty, it was like our Sunday ritual. We'd listen to some relaxing music and we'd wash our bikes. Now it's like, crap, I haven't washed my bike in 3 weeks. But we do have, even on the road, we have a little wash bucket with all the little different kinds of scrubby things, and try to keep them pretty clean as much as we can. How
about the MRP coil? I haven't ridden one. I have ridden other coil forks. I don't like linear forks. They're plush. I run my fork a little bit stiffer than a lot of people. I don't want a super squishy fork. I want a fork that when I push into it, it pushes back. When I go for a manual or a bunny hop, or when I'm really sprinting, I don't want it just saggy. Now, if I were racing downhill or enduro, I'd probably set it up kind of squishy so it always tracked the ground perfectly. And coils are pretty good for that. I feel like coils are a little bit of a trend right now, and people throw them on to look cool when they don't even. When it's not always the best thing. For some people, it is the best thing, but I know some people are so mad when a bike comes out and they can't run a coil on it, and it's like you're kind of missing the point. Why don't you try the way the suspension was designed first, and then if it's not doing what it needs to do, try modifying that. But some people are more interested in running a coil, and I know I'm talking shock, not fork, but some people are more interested in running a coil than getting, like, if you were to tell them what's the feel you want it to feel like, they wouldn't be able to describe it. They just know they want a coil because they look cool.
Shannon asked about Cushcore. I will just say first, like, Steve has a lot more experience, so we'll definitely let him chime in. I say there's probably about 3 rides a year that I go on that I think I could really benefit from Cushcore, like things like the whole enchilada, where you're going to be pretty prone to pinch flats. I do think that it would be really nice. I know that a lot of people also kind of like the almost using it like a volume reducer, how it kind of amps as the tire squishes, it kind of amps up a little bit and gives you a little bit more support. So I'm kind of curious to try Cushcore, even though I don't feel like I need it very often. And I know that there's some lighter weight options and stuff. So I'm kind of thinking I will probably try it at some point, but it probably won't be the Plus. That's just going to be super heavy. Steve runs, is it the Plus that you run in yours? Steve runs Plus Cushcore in his, and it is quite heavy. So depending on, how strong your legs are and how much muscle you have, for me, it's a bit much when I ride his Hardtail. It's a super fun bike, but it gets pretty tiring. Granted, you could probably get used to it and get stronger, but.
I'm sponsored by Cushcore. I love them. I wouldn't run them in an XC bike. For Sedona style trails and Moab trails, it's amazing. The level of traction you get is incredible, and it helps your suspension. It actually does. They did some studies where they ran it on on Cushcore and non-Cushcore, and the ones with Cushcore, their suspension was working 15% less or 16% less hard. So the Cushcore was absorbing some of it, so then you can retune your shocks to handle the bigger hits. So I'm a big fan. On long pedally days, you do feel it, but I've never been much of a weight weenie.
And then,
I love it.
They make some that are not quite as heavy. So, and
here's who it's good for. It's good for people that are riding stuff that's so steep that you don't have to pedal to maintain your speed. You just have to let off the brakes a little more and you go faster. If you're going that fast and your stuff's that steep and rocky, Cushcore all the way. And I run it front and rear. If you're on most trails, it's not needed unless the rocks are square, that sort of thing. So I like it.
I want to try it, but
she's affected by weight way more than I am.
But I'd love to try Cushcore.
I can still ride farther and faster than a lot of my friends when the Cushcore's in it, and I still have friends that will outride me no matter how light my bike is.
Do we have any other questions? We're kind of getting to
continuous roots, rocks, etc. Does the Living Link Mayhem work well in that? It can, but the Living Link, when you start learning about suspension and how they work, the anti-squat number is what prevents it from bobbing. It's when you pedal, the suspension actually stands up instead of squishes down. And the Mayhem's got pretty good. When you're pedaling, the Mayhem is not going to track the roots and rocks as well as like a Specialized or a YT or something with a 4-bar, a Transition, Rocky Mountain. Something like those track really well, but they also bob. So back in the West, I prefer the Mayhem. It's stiff. It sprints really well. It feels sort of hardtailish on the climbs. And then on the downs, when you're not pedaling, it's buttery smooth. And the Mayhem is super picky about pressure in the rear shock, so you've got to get that perfect. But once you do, it's amazing. But it's not amazing if you're wanting, like you're riding back east and you want it to track every route and you're okay with it being a little squishier so you have more traction. It's not the bike I would choose for that.
Cactus Jack asked if I'm able to do all or most of my bike maintenance on my own. I can't do all of it on my own. I mean, just the day-to-day stuff, like I can keep my drivetrain clean. I can change the chain. I can adjust my suspension. I can I don't know what else can I do
You can
totally by
install
myself. I can install tires, like
lead your brakes and change your brake
I
pads.
can set up tubeless pretty well on my own. I can change brake pads, but stuff that gets more involved, like I haven't ever set my limiter screw on my derailleur by myself. I still kind of pull Steve in to kind of help me with some of that stuff. It's the kind of thing that I do so infrequently that I always forget which direction and things like that. So I'm learning. I feel like every year I kind of like get a little bit more, but I do my very, very best to be involved as much as I can. I even bled my brakes this year for the first time, which was cool.
Back to Q03, comparing the Mayhem with the Ripley, they're going to be very close. The Ripley is a great pedaler too. I would say it's got a more firm pedaling platform than a lot of other bikes. So they're very close to each other. I haven't ridden the new Ripley, but I've seen the numbers and stuff. And the Ripley is a sprinter and an XC and a quick bike, not a soggy one that will just soak up all the bumps.
Thank you, Cactus Jack. Yes, we have given thoughts. Yes.
Yep, we have.
We have. We have a financial plan like most normal people. People don't realize that Steve has like a normal job with benefits and all of that stuff, and we do have a financial plan.
Yep. Oh, Kyle. Hey, good to see you, Kyle. Kyle's our good friend. He was on our bike packing trip in the Bay Area. That was a lot of
if
fun.
You guys haven't seen our bike packing the San Francisco Peninsula video, you should check it out. It's a good watch.
Hey, Robert, congrats on your Rollick 150. Such a good bike. I love that bike.
I can't wait for mine.
Tess gets hers next week.
It's coming so soon. I'm excited. We're kind of winding down. So if anyone has any last minute questions, I'm just gonna just kind of plug a few things. If you want Dusty Betty shirts, or if you want one of the cool gear bags like I posted about in my recent video, make sure that you go to dustybetty.com/shop and you can find all of the good stuff. I've got my girls like diamonds raglan tee on today, which I'm digging. The hoodies are also pretty cool. There's t-shirts there. Steve and I, in 2 weeks, we are going on a guided trip to the North Rim of the Grand Canyon. There are still a few spots. And so if you would like to come, we would love to have you. It's going to be super fun. We're going to film a video. So it's really cool. If you have any questions about the trip, I've got more info if you're curious about like how many miles on what days. And let me know. If you're on the fence, I might be able to do something to help get you out there. So let me know. But it's going to be super fun. Thanks everybody for watching. Thanks so much for tuning in, everybody. Like it means a lot that you guys show up. I know it's been a while since we've done one of these. It's a little bit like if you've been watching for very long on this live stream, Steve and I have talked about how crazy life has been lately. It's been really crazy lately. But we're still here and we're going strong, and having your guys' support on Dusty Betty as well as Hardtail Party means a lot. We love doing this, and we will have to, continue to balance family and work and all the other things. But we're still going to be here, and you guys are awesome. We love you guys. And thanks to like some of you guys are tuning in like the middle of the night. So thank you so much. I've thought, man, maybe we should do like a Saturday morning live stream one time so that some of our friends can watch after work instead of having to be watching in the middle of the night. But thank you. No, Shrenda, thank you for that. Hey, Joseph. Yay. You guys need to check out Minor Biker. He's on YouTube and on Instagram, and he does some cool adventures.
Yeah, we're up in northern Utah for the next couple weeks, except for our Grand Canyon trip. So if you're up here and you want to ride, let us know. Drop us a line if it will ever stop raining up here.
I know. It's raining like crazy. Steve and I were like, oh, sweet. We're going to have family to help watch the baby so we can do all this riding. And it's just been raining nonstop since we've been here. But, yeah, we will be doing some riding.
Cool. Let's shut her down.
All right, cool. Thanks so much for watching, everybody.
Thanks for all the support.
Bye.